Hi, my name is Asad Kiani and I'm from Salesforce Center of Innovation. This presentation is about the discovery process that we recently implemented. We will cover why we need this discovery process, and we will also look at some of the high-level concepts of the discovery process, which is divided into three parts of context, features, and functional. So I'll cover those areas as well. And then we will look at, in the end, the benefits of this discovery process for the village and some of the enhancement that we will probably make in the coming future to improve this process further to the next level. So let's get started. First of all, why do we require a discovery process? So discovery process is a core part of our overall application development lifecycle. So there is another presentation on the overall intake process, which is how we get new projects from different business units. And the discovery process is one of the core function within that application development lifecycle, and it covers the requirement side. And the reason why discovery process is required is because the quality of the requirements that you obtain determines the quality of the value that we will bring for the village. And also this is a process by which we can understand why there's an issue that needs resolution, the impact of that issue, and also look at some of the features that can actually resolve that issue. So this process covers all those three areas. And in the past, we did not have a consistent process to gather the requirements from different stakeholders. So the quality of those requirements substantially depends on the person who was collecting those requirements. So there is an inconsistent quality of those requirements in the past. And this process now is already implemented, and it's part of every intake that we accept from different business users. So the high-level understanding of what this process can be obtained, if you look at this diagram and look at the three key areas that are on the screen, starting from the context on the left, the features in the middle, and the functional side on the right hand side. So one of the approach that we have for the discovery process is a top-down approach, which means that we covers only the high-level stuff first and then move towards the low-level details. So we control the discussion in a way that the high-level concepts are covered first. So that's why if you look at on the left in the context area, you see that we need to understand what issue a business user is facing, and then we look at how we can resolve that issue. And then that gives us a context of what we are trying to achieve. And then we move towards gathering more of the business requirements and then the functional requirements at the end. I'll be explaining it more in detail, so let's go to the next slide. So we start with asking questions on the issues and challenges, or we call it as pain points, from our business users. And why is it important to understand it? Because that also gives you a context of the challenges that they are facing and the reason why they require a solution. So that reason comes from understanding the pain points. Once we know it, we also then determine who is affected by those challenges or issues, and what is the overall impact of that issue. This helps us to qualify and quantify the value to the village because of understanding the issue and what the benefit will bring if we resolve that issue. So this is how we start building context. So once we have the pain points, the next step is to look at how those pain points at a very high level can be resolved. So again, this is purely from a business point of view and not from technology point of view. So we ask the business stakeholder understanding of what needs to be done to resolve the pain points or the issues. And this also determines the success criteria for that project. So when they say, okay, this pain can be resolved if we have this solution, then that also provides us with the success criteria of that project. And we also align an issue with an objective. So an issue can have, or a pain point can have, a single objective or multiple objectives. So objectives are like outcomes, and you will see in the next slides as well that we have divided outcomes from a top-down approach, which means starting with the high-level outcomes, which we call it as objective, to the next level of detail, which is the epics. So once we have listed all the outcomes, we have listed all the pain points, we understand that these are the challenges that our business users are facing. Then we also have determined the possible solutions, again from a business point of view, at a very, very high level. Then we take each one of those outcomes and then break these down into what we call it as epics. So epics are pretty much like objectives, but at a lower level of detail. And then these are equivalent to gathering business requirements from a user. So, but the difference here is that those business requirements or features or outcomes are aligned to a specific objective. So the scope is limited to the objective that we are working on. So once those are broken down into epics and aligned to the objective, then this gives us a much more comprehensive picture of why there is a need for a solution and what features can actually resolve that. So once we have done with the epics, then with the help of the business stakeholders, we start writing what we call it as user stories. So again, as I explained before, outcomes can be looked at from a high-level view, which we call it as objectives, into the next level of detail, which are epics. And for each epic, there can be multiple user stories. So user stories are also outcomes, but they are more functional in nature. There is a specific format that we use for user stories, and it covers the type of the user, what that user wants. So that's an outcome. And then the potential benefit to the user or to the business unit if that function is performed. So the format of a user story is similar to that of an epic, because epics have the three key areas as well. But the level of detail is lower, and user stories are almost always either functional or non-functional, or technical, as we call it, non-functional as technical requirements. So once we have gathered all these, then there is our development team involvement in the next phase of the discovery. So purely the Scrum Master and the stakeholder develop the initial discovery requirement. So they have identified all the issues, listed all the objectives, listed all the epics, and listed all the stories. So these are all business related. Now the development team will look at those and validate the requirements and then break those functional stories, user stories, into development tasks. So once they identify those development tasks, they know that if those development tasks are performed, then it will cover one of the user stories, and if multiple user stories are covered, then it will cover one epic. And when multiple epics are covered, then it will be able to achieve an objective which is aligned to an issue. So this is how the overall process works, from a very high top level approach to breaking down into next level of detail. So the benefit that we have for this process, which is already implemented, is the approach that we use is, first of all, it's a consistent process. So all Scrum Master use the same artifacts, which is basically the presentation or the spreadsheet that we use to gather requirements. So there is a consistent look and feel of requirements in spite of the fact that they are for different projects. And then the second important benefit is that it helps us to qualify the value of that project, because when you are assigning resources to a project, it's important that it brings value to the village. This whole process of alignment helps us to identify the value it will bring to the business unit and to the village at large. It also helps us to prioritize work so that we can identify which of these project intakes are requests from the user groups or the business units for a development task. We call it as project intakes. So it helps us to prioritize which of those intakes are more important, and then we plan those ahead of others within our sprint cycle. And then last, I think the most important thing is that by aligning issues with objectives and then by aligning everything else, it creates a sort of a matrix where we can track what we have done and how that actually translated into a benefit or an objective resolution of an issue for a business user. So this discovery process, I think, is important because of that it can affect the final outcome of that project. So these are the benefits that I think for the business unit and also for us and the village. Now in future, because this is the first time we have implemented this process, we are using it now. The Scrum Master has been trained on it. But we are also using Agile Accelerator for creating our epics and stories. So we need to work on better alignment with that tool so that it feels all. There's an alignment between what we do and the tool that we use, which is an Agile Accelerator. We also probably will need to develop an application to manage the requirements using this framework. So currently this is more about process, a manual process that we have with the users, and we use a spreadsheet to document those requirements. In future, I think we'll go for an application that will do this as well. And then we need to provide extensive training to our super users so that they know what to expect from the discovery process, and then they can prepare in advance of what is required there. So if I have to summarize this, I think the key thing is the same what I've explained in the introduction, which is that the quality of the requirements determine the quality or the value to the village. So that's why this process is so important. Thanks.